This
Mining.
conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so my name is Vijay. So I will be your trainer for this Azure administration training module. I coming to my experience, I'm basically an infrastructure guy, more into server administration, and my areas of expertise: Citrix and Azure. Okay, so with around 15 years of experience, that's what I back. Okay, so currently working as a infrastructure architect for one of the company. So as I said, my core areas are Azure and Citrix, and I did work as a server admin before. I got into an infrastructure admin and got into Citrix and Azure. Okay, so that's little bit about me. So without waiting further, so we can get started. So what is this Azure administration course, and what is that we cover, and who are those people who should be kind of getting a knowledge on this? So if you are kind of system admin or into an administration mode, and you want to get into the cloud administration, and this is the course that what you should be looking. That is one. And you are a developer or an administrator, and you want to get into the administration Azure arena, and then you want to become an architect kind of role. You are looking for that kind of role. Okay, again, this is the kind of basic stuff that where you should be starting. So whether you want to become an architect, or whether you want to get into the normal L2 or L3 administration role within the Azure, this is the course that what you should be looking for. Okay, so this course that whatever we are going to kind of cover will cover not only the content with respect to the exam, but it will also kind of design in such a way that it will help you to perform your day-to-day activities if you are getting into an Azure administrator role, or if you are getting into designing or solutioning, then that will help you to understand the kind of things that whatever will happen at the lower level, right? So uh, long thing short, so if you want to be an administrator, this is what you should be looking for. If you want to be an architect, this is where you should be starting from, right? So that's what I was trying to say. Now, so this is a demonstration class, so I just stick myself to the basics. Few of the things that which you might already know, just stay tuned. And what we do is, if time permits, we will look at the Azure virtual machine deployment within the Azure, and try to understand how things will be and kind of stuff. And then we'll look at what is that we are going to cover as a part of this entire course. So that's what the agenda is, right? So this is what the agenda, right? So computing, cloud computing basics, and then what are the different services. I think few of you might already know this. And then we'll start with what are the different regions or geographies, and how the exact Azure infrastructure is, and where they are located and other stuff. And then we'll discuss quickly on the services part, what are the different Azure services we have, and we'll talk about the marketplace, where you get to see what are the services that which are available. And as I said, this course is mostly into the infrastructure part. So we will be concentrating mostly on the infrastructure part. Don't expect any development kind of stuff here. Okay, so we do discuss some automation stuff using Azure Resource Management templates, ARM templates, PowerShell, or Azure CLI. So that is part of this course, but don't expect the kind of web apps or logic apps or kind of stuff here. Okay, so just want to make sure that you have that clarity before you take this course. Now, so we discuss on VMs and VM sizes, and then how do we provision the VMs within the Azure, and then we'll quickly look at the course content, and we'll try to see what are those things that which we are going to cover as a part of this course, and then I'll explain you how the lab environment is going to work. So those are the few things that which we are going to cover in the next 1 hour, maybe 1 hour 10 minutes kind of stuff. So to start with, what is a cloud, right? So before we get into an understanding of the cloud infrastructure itself, so we need to understand how things were before we got into this cloud, right? So there used to be a situation or the companies where they have to buy a physical server and then put an operating system on that and then use that server for a single OS, which means that the organization might not be using the 100% on that particular server the resources like CPU, memory, or storage or whatsoever, right? So that is where your server physical server, on top of that you have a operating system, on top of that you have a application. So to get rid of those the wastage of resources or unutilized resources, so what the next what do you call it as transformation, that whatever has happened is into an hypervisor world, right? So in the hypervisor world, what you have is you have, let me open a notepad so that MS Paint, so that we understand it clearly. Right. So in the earlier days, you used to have a physical server. On top of it, you used to put an operating system, and then you have an application on top of it, right? So that's how it used to be. And as I said, most of the organizations are not utilizing 100% of these resources, whatever you have here. Now, then what happened as a part of the change improvement? So you have uh, a solution called as hypervisor, right? Now, what hypervisor does is it abstracts your what do you call it as hardware layer. Then on top of the hardware layer, you install this hypervisor. And on top of this hypervisor, what you can do is you can host multiple servers, which means that multiple operating systems you can deploy. So what is the advantage of this particular solution? So you are utilizing your server resources, the physical hardware resources, 100%, and this layer, that whatever you have here, is kind of act as a mediator between your physical hardware and these virtual machines, that whatever you have. These are all not physical machines, these are all virtual machines, right? So that is the next world that what we got into. And the popular hypervisors, maybe most of you are aware of. One is VMware ESXi and your Microsoft Hyper-V, and you have some other players like Zen Server, etc. Right? So these are prominent or popular hypervisors. So in this hypervisor world, what you can do is you can cluster multiple servers, right? So these hypervisor layers can be clustered so that even if you have one of this physical host going down, your resource can move from this particular host to this particular host. It is very much possible. So that level of high availability is available across different hypervisor hosts. That's what the next model was, or next transformation was. Now, because we have this hypervisor model and this virtual machine concepts, so on top of this, now we have a layer which is called as a cloud layer. Now this cloud stack, that what we can call it as, will help users to use this underlying infrastructure using a cloud stack, And this can again not necessarily be on the data center of your organization, but you are getting it from a third party, right? So to quote another example to understand it better, so what are those characteristics that any cloud should have? You should be able to access it over the internet. It should be available 24/7, and it should be secured. It should be scalable, right? And with high availability is again unimportant, right? So all these characteristics that whatever you have, we call it as a cloud. So anything that which has got all these characteristics. Now what are those characteristics? Those characteristics of scalability or high availability, right? And security, and all these things characters any cloud should have for that matter. Now these are few definitions that what we picked from Wikipedia or MS Azure or Amazon sites. What does these definitions say? They say that this cloud is nothing but usage of resources. So far we were talking about only servers, but it is not necessarily be a server. It can be an application, or it can be a storage, or it can be a backup solution. So all these resources that whatever you use over the network, which reside on a service provider data center, and you pay for what you are using, and you have that ability of scaling the resources as per your requirement. That's what you can call it as a cloud. So though you have 4 or 3 definitions here, if you summarize, all of them will talk the same. That's what a cloud is. Now, what are those characteristics any cloud should have for that matter? So when do you call a specific service as a cloud service? Now, here are few of the characteristics we can talk about. So the first one we can discuss about is on-demand self-service. What does it mean? So what it means is you can provision the things. You can commission your servers, applications on your own as per your requirement. So what it means is you don't have dependency on multiple support teams, where you in your traditional data center model where you have to rely on your finance team to get a code, then somebody has to approve, then you get a physical server, somebody has to rack, stack, and patch, and somebody has to install operating system, and then an application, then you get things done, right? So in this model, you don't have that kind of weight or whatever. You will be provided with tools like a GUI tool, maybe a portal, or might be a command line interface, or might be a programming language by using the APIs that whatever your cloud service provider provides, you can code that as well. So on-demand self-service is one of the characteristics of your cloud. And the next one is measured service. Today I might need a server of 5 GB of RAM and 2 virtual CPUs and 100 GB of storage or whatsoever. And I will be paying for only for that what I am using. I am getting a measured service. I go and select, and then I pay for whatever I am using. I can see how much I utilized, what are the resources that what I utilized, and what resource cost what, and then that will help you to analyze your cost and reduce it further wherever it is needed. And most of these service providers has got good analytical tools which will help you to understand, and few advisories as well, right, which will help you to understand where is that your where, what are those unutilized resources kind of stuff, right? So whatever the case, so it is another characteristic of a cloud. The next one is rapid elasticity, right? So now quite often we get into a situation where when we plan our initial solution or the capacity of our infrastructure, and over a period of time you may get to a situation where you need to increase those resources, or sometimes you may have to decrease them. So when we call about elasticity, it can be increasing the resources on the same server or adding additional servers to the existing pool of servers, or we can call it as a cluster, an application cluster or server cluster or whatever. So when we increase the resources on the same server or the same resource, then we call it as scale up, because you are increasing it on the same one, right? That is called as scaling up. When you are adding additional servers to a cluster, then you call it as scale out, right? Scale up, scale out. So you can easily scale up or scale out the resources in the cloud. Whereas in your traditional data center model, what you have to do is you have to purchase, you have to procure, and maybe you might not be using those resources after 1 month or 2 months. But here, that problem is not there. So that is another characteristic of a cloud. And then you have a resource pooling. Now, when a service provider, might be Amazon, Azure, or AWS, whoever it is, when they are into this business of cloud, so the underlying infrastructure is very huge, right? So they have a pool of resources readily available to cater the needs of their customers. So the resources are spanned across different data centers, which we will be seeing in a few minutes for Azure, across different regions. And you have that multi-tenant model where multiple tenants will be using the resources that whatever are available. So there is no such situation where you are getting out of the resources, and there is no, of course there are some hard limits and soft limits for every resource that whatever you use for any of the service provider, but you have enough resource pooling for your requirement. So that is another characteristic. And the last one what we have to discuss about is the network. So integration between different data centers within the Azure or within the AWS, right? Connectivity between different regions, or connectivity from your on-premises environment to your Azure cloud. When I say on-premises, it's a data center that what an organization owns. A hybrid cloud model, you can call it as. So where you connect your data center using a VPN solution or an express route solution or whatsoever, those type of, kind of accessibility when it comes to the network should be there, right? So these are the characteristics of cloud. If you take any of the cloud which is widely talked about, then all those things will have these characteristics. Okay, now let us move on further. So what is that me as an organization will get out of this? So when I adopt a cloud model, or when I decide to move to cloud, so what is that I am going to get out of it? So these are few things, right? So cost, we know that there are two types of cost, right? Capital expense and then operational expenses, right? Capital expense where you put a lot of money to purchase the things, right? So servers or storage devices, switches, software, and so on. Capital expense. And then you have operational expenses to manage the things, that server administration or storage administration, network administration, patching, security management, operational. So the cost can be divided into these two things, right? Apex and capex, capital and operational. So when you get into a cloud model, you are reducing your capital expenses. It might not be an immediate result that what you see, but over the period of time, you see those kind of what do you call it as results. So operational and capital. So when we talk about the operational, how are we reducing the operational cost? So based upon the service model, right, it might be infrastructure as service or platform as service or software as service, there is a reduction in the layers of support that what you as an organization has to do, which we will be discussing in our subsequent slides. But overall, you are reducing your operational cost because you are not managing the hardware. You do not have to worry about the disk failure or server down or firmware updates and so on, right? So certain level of cost reduction when it comes to the operations. And so as your capital expense, right, you are not purchasing anything. So this is the cost benefit: speed, productivity, and performance. So when we talk about speed, productivity, and performance, the speed with which you can deploy the things will help you to get into a situation where you have better productivity of your resources and you get high performing compute. You have different types of what you call it as resources based on your requirement, and you can switch between different sizes of VMs, different performance tiers of a storage. So you have that flexibility of switching, right? So speed, productivity, and perform across presence across different regions of the world. Azure has got its presence in 54 different geographical locations, maybe around 140 plus countries, I think so. So this global presence will help you to expand your business with ease, right? Today you might have your business in India and you may have to expand that to the US or UK or wherever. Then you can deploy resources in that particular region, and you need not have to kind of go and set up a data center and whatsoever, right? So that's an advantage that which you get. And then security. So when we talk security here, it is not okay. So let me put it in a different way. So when we talk about security, it is a collective responsibility of you as a customer, and it is the responsibility of the service provider as well when it comes to the security. It's not just Azure. Okay, so I did deploy something on Azure, it's Microsoft responsibility when it comes to the security. No, nothing like that. So the cloud and underlying layer, that whatever you have, the security is managed by Azure. So if you are using infrastructure as service, you are still responsible for your operating system security, hardening of your operating system and whatsoever. Or if you're hosting an application like IaaS or whatsoever, you are still responsible for managing the security of that. And of course, you have those tools or resources which will help you to harden the things. That is there, but you need to deploy and use those resources, right? So security, it's a collective responsibility of your service provider and you as a customer. Right, so these are the benefits that which you get out of cloud. Okay, so when you move to the cloud model, now who is competing with whom? I think we know this, right? So you can see that Amazon Web Services, Azure, GCP, I think Alibaba and IBM, it is the other way. So these are the major market players. Around 50% of the market share with AWS, and Microsoft Azure has got maybe around 50% of what AWS has got when it comes to the market share. But so when we look at the recent developments, they are going good. Recently, they did got that US defense major deal, right? So it's good progress, but it's a long way to go for Azure to beat AWS. So that's something that which we need to aware of. But when it comes to the growth rate, so it is very much higher than when compared to AWS. Right. So this is a Garter Quadrant, so which basically talks about the growth of cloud services, specifically infrastructure as service. So you can see those numbers around $81, $81 billion by 2022, which means that there are quite a good opportunities within the infrastructure as service. What do you call it as infrastructure as a service area. Okay, right. So let us quickly understand a few basics within the cloud itself. I think you guys might be aware of this, but just at a very high level, we'll discuss. So types of cloud, you can categorize them into three. There is something called as community cloud as well. I didn't include that here, but majorly what we discuss is about three, right? Private, public, and hybrid cloud. Now, private cloud is, okay, before private, let us discuss public cloud. A public cloud is a cloud where the resources that what you use reside in the service provider data center. So the server, storage devices, network appliances, or network devices, whatever you use, reside in the data center of your service provider, and you pay for what you use. That is your public cloud. Now, whereas a private cloud is private, which means that owned by somebody, right? So it might be an organization specific cloud. Maybe you are a financial organization and you have some regulatory requirements or compliance requirements where you don't want to put your kind of resources in the public cloud. Then you can go and deploy a cloud stack and you can use the resources, whatever you have underlying through this private cloud. Now here you as an organization are still manage and maintain the infrastructure, which is not when it comes to the public cloud, right? Now a hybrid cloud is a combination of these two. Now most of the organizations are into this model, right? Hybrid cloud model or multi-cloud model also is there. So where you have your organization resources across different clouds. So what we are discussing here is hybrid cloud, where you have both private and public cloud. Okay. Now this services within the cloud. Now whatever you use within the cloud, you use it as a service. Whether you use a server or whether you use a database or whether you use a web service or whatever. So all the services that whatever, all the resources that whatever you have within the cloud are available as services. Now here is the table which talks about different services, the comparison, and which layer is managed by who. So you have this table where towards your left side you see a traditional services, which is a traditional data center model, and comparatively with we are comparing this with different services. Now let us try to understand our traditional data center model where that is listed as traditional services. Now in this model, what you as an organization will do is you will be managing the entire stack right from that network layer to the application layer. So you manage the physical hardware part, the servers and the storage devices, network devices, and the hypervisors that which are sitting on top of your hardware, and the operating system, application, and so on. Everything is managed by you. That is your traditional model. Now, if I want to move to the cloud, then I should be picking one of the services which are IaaS or PaaS or SaaS. There are other services like desktop as service or backup as service, database as service, and so on, but I didn't include those things. These are the major ones, the three things that whatever you see here. So in infrastructure as service, within the cloud, what you do is you build an operating system on top of the cloud environment. And then you install the application and then manage and maintain that application. So that's the reason the managed by organization. So what is that? You as an organization is responsible for its operating system and any application or data that which sits on top of it. But this operating system might be sitting on a hypervisor, which in turn sits on a physical server, which are connected to a storage and network. This hypervisor, physical server, storage and network is managed and maintained by your service provider in their data center. So to talk about infrastructure as service, in infrastructure as service, you are responsible for commissioning the operating system, managing and maintaining the operating system. To talk in detail, you are responsible for patching the operating system. You are responsible for the performance of the operating system. You are responsible for hardening of the operating system and anything that which sits on top of that operating system layer. And the next one is platform as service. So as we move towards your right side, the number of layers that which you as an organization manage and maintain will get reduced. So that's the reason when you solution your what do you call it as requirement, you need to understand where does my requirement fit, whether it will fit in infrastructure as service, platform as service, or software as service. So in platform as service, the operating system, middleware, and runtime, and the hypervisor, physical server, storage, and network, all these things are managed and maintained by your service provider. Best example is a database. So let us say that you have a requirement of a SQL service. Now you have two choices here. One, go infrastructure as service, install SQL application, and then create those database instances that whatever you need. That is very much possible in infrastructure as service. But why do you want to go to that model when you have this database which is available as a service, where you just have to go and create an instance and start using it? So what is that you are getting rid of in platform as service? I did not have to manage that operating system and not have to worry about patching and availability of the operating system. And in fact, I need not have to worry about the software updates of SQL as well. Right? So I'm just quoting SQL as an example so that you guys can understand it easily. So based on your requirement, if you need more control on the application, then you can still go with IIS and then install SQL on that and manage it. So where you get better control. But in platform as service, you are reducing the operational cost, right? So that is an advantage that which you get when you move to the platform as service, because the number of layers that what you manage is reduced. And the last one is software as service. If you look at that stack, you just have to use the application. Everything is managed by your service provider. Example again is Office 365 or the GoToMeeting that what we are using, right? So these are few examples. So when you solution, when you design, when you assess your requirements, you need to look at where does my requirement fit, right? So, and based on that, you take a call whether you want to put it in IaaS, SaaS, PaaS, or whatever, right? So these are the different services that what we have within the cloud. Now, so far what we discussed is a general terminology of cloud, right? So we understood a few things about cloud. Now let us quickly jump into the Azure itself, because that's what we are going to learn. So this is picked from the Azure Portal. Again, it talks the same cloud definition. What does it say? It is a freedom to build, manage, deploy applications on a massive global network using your favorite tools and frameworks. So the same cloud definition. So little bit overview. So Microsoft started their cloud services in the year 2010 with a name called Windows Azure. And of course, they renamed it to Microsoft Azure in the year 2014. And when compared to their competitors, what they say is they invested a lot in the data centers and their presence across the globe. We'll try to look at their presence across the globe. Okay, so let me quickly show that. Microsoft Azure infrastructure. Right, so this map that what you're seeing here will tell you the presence of Azure, or the data centers of Azure, you can call it as. So they say that they divided that into regions. If you see that 55 and then 140 countries. So major presence in US and Europe, and of course you can see the South Americas as well, and then Africa, and then Middle East and other regions. So what we need to understand here in this diagram is they divided this entire infrastructure into something called as geographies, and they in turn divided these geographies into something called as regions. So each region will have one or more data centers, right? You can see this box towards your right side. So the region 1 has got multiple data centers. Region 2 has got 2 data centers. So each region will have one or more data centers. So a region, combination of region will form a geography. So they say that this, what do you call it as the filled circle, right? So you can see it, a circle which is a blue color completely filled, they are available regions. And the dotted circles, if you see it here, Qatar, right? Central UAE, that is still deployment in progress. So it is not into production. And then there's something called as, which is very important, called as availability zones. So availability zone is a special feature within a region. A region, as I said, will have multiple data centers, and these data centers has a feature called as availability zone. Now, what is an availability zone? Availability zone is nothing but again one or more data centers. Now, how is it different with a normal data center? An availability zone data centers are independent of each other, which means that in an availability zone, if you have two data centers, data center 1 is independent of data center 2. In what way? It has got its own power, it has got its own cooling, it has got its own network. Now, what is the advantage of this? So in a region, if one of the data center has got some problem, you can have your services or the applications running in another data center. That's how you are attaining the high availability using a solution called as availability zones. So we will discuss in detail when we provision the resources. It is one of the high availability solution that what we are going to use in Azure solutioning. But what we need to understand today is a region will have an availability zone and one or more availability zones. So availability zone 1 will have its own power, cooling, and what you call it as network, so as 2, so as 3. So availability zones, group of data centers, region, and group of regions geographies. So when you deploy your resources in Azure, you will be selecting the region or the geography where you are going to go and deploy the resources. Okay, now, so let us try to understand little bit about geographies. These are very much required for us to understand where we have to deploy or we are going to deploy the resources. Now, so geographies, you have Americas as one geography, right? Within Americas, you have these regions. right? So if you go back to the diagram or the map that what we had seen, right, Americas, and then these are the regions, right? Similarly, you have Europe, and within the Europe that you have multiple regions. Similarly, Asia Pacific, different regions, Middle East, right? So these are the different geographies and then regions. So they have Middle East, Africa, Asia Pacific, Europe and Americas. These are the geographies and these are the regions. Now another important thing is product by region. So why this is important? Reason being, not every service or the product in Azure is available in every region. So you need to go and look at whether the product or the service is available in the region where you want to deploy. So that is another important thing. So not every product is available in every region. You need to understand and go and look whether the solution or the service or the product that whatever you are looking is available in the region that what you want to deploy. This is where you can search for that. Locations, physical locations where the data centers are located. Now, these are the regions, right? One geography has multiple regions. Okay, but where is this region? Where is the data center of this region? So it is in Iowa. Where is the data center of East US2? It is in Virginia, and so on. So you have these data center details, right? So if you talk about Asia Pacific, if you are more interested about India, then you have three data centers, three regions, I'm sorry, in India, where data centers are located in Pune, Chennai, and Mumbai, right? So these are few, what do you call it, as some base information that which we should be aware of. So which will help us when we you know, deploy the resources. Okay. Now, so whatever the resources that which you use on Azure, they are available as services, right? It might be infrastructure as service, platform as service, or whatsoever. Now, where do I find all those products or the services that are available within the Azure? For that, they have something called as marketplace, right? They have something called as marketplace, Azure Marketplace. Now this will help you to go and look at what are the services that which are available. If you are looking for what do you call it, as a, a storage service or kind of database service or IoT or whatever, so all the services that whatever which are available within the Azure are listed here, are listed here. So this is another important portal that which we should be aware of. Okay, now let us get back to it. Now, okay, so we understood the regions, we understood services, how do we look at, but how can I access the services? Now, as I said in our initial discussion, the characteristics of cloud, you have that characteristic of on-demand self-service, right? So where you should be provisioning the or commissioning the things on your own. Now, what are those tools that which are provided to you as a customer by the service provider, especially here in our case, Azure? So in order to deploy these services or use these services, you have a portal. And using this portal, what we do is we go and deploy the resources. Now that portal, that whatever we are going to use is portal.azure.com. So using this GUI interface, you will have that ability to go and deploy all the resources that whatever you are in need of. Now if you look at this all services here, These all services will give you the list of services that which are available. Now these are nothing but the services that whatever we had seen in our marketplace few minutes back, right? So your AI, blockchain, containers, database, and so on. So you go and choose the service that whatever you want and then deploy that service. This is one way of doing, right? Portal. Now, apart from portal, most of the service providers will provide you a command line interface. In our case, in Azure, we have both PowerShell and Azure CLI. If you're good at PowerShell, if you're a Windows admin and you got some good knowledge in PowerShell, you can use your PowerShell command let's by deploying PowerShell modules and then use those modules to deploy it. And if you're not comfortable with PowerShell, they have something called as Azure CLI. This is another command line solution we have to manage and deploy the resources. Now, what is the difference between PowerShell and Azure CLI? Azure CLI is can be installed. This CLI module can be installed on any operating system, which means if you are a Linux guy and you want to deploy this on a Linux operating system, you can deploy it so as Mac, so as Windows. So PowerShell, it's a traditional Windows tool, right? So if you are good at it, use this. Now, what are the other tools that which we have? You can use Visual Studio as well. If you are a Visual Studio developer, then you can use Visual Studio and then what you call it as infrastructure as code, right? So you can code. Apart from that, they provide you SDKs based on whatever the language that which you have command on. You can use those SDKs and write code and deploy resources. That is also possible. If you want to use Python or Ruby or whatsoever, use Azure SDKs and call the APIs of Azure and then deploy the resources. So these are few tools that which we use. Now, apart from this, so what we have very important is ARM templates, or ARM we can call it Azure Resource Manager. It's another way of deploying the resources. Here we use JSON, right? Here we use JSON. So we'll see JSON at not ARM templates. We'll look into it, but not in detail, but whatever is needed. So in our classes, we will be using Portal, PowerShell, Azure CLI, and Azure Resource Manager. And for Azure Resource Manager, we can use Visual Studio also to look at the code and tweak and whatever. So we'll look into that. How do we use, right? So these are the different tools that which are available. Okay. Now, so the next one is what I want to quickly talk about is Azure Virtual Machines. Now, as I said, you have that ability to go and pick whatever the size that which you are in need of. So if I talk about a virtual machine, so virtual machine comes in different sizes. Based on your requirement, you can go and select the right size. You might need something which is where you have more CPU requirement. Or you might have a requirement where you want more storage, more IOs. Your application does a lot of IOs, more reads and writes to the storage. Those type of situations, you may go and select a size which fits more to your requirement, where you get maximum IOPS. So what I'm trying to say here is Azure provides you different sizes of VMs or resources, we can call it as. Based on your requirement, you can go and select the right size. And again, we can call or compare this with t-shirt sizes. People will compare it with t-shirt size. Now, why it is so? When you go to a garment shop and purchase a t-shirt, what do? You go and say that, okay, my size is XL, right? So I need a XL t-shirt. So they give that size. There are standard sizes, right? A 34, 38 or whatsoever. Similarly, here in Azure, you have the standard sizes of VMs. Now this raises a question, can I customize a size that what I am in need of? That option is not there. So if I am in need of a 4 virtual CPUs and 16 GB of RAM, then I might be looking at certain size that which is already there or which is near to my requirement. So Azure doesn't have or give that option to the customer where they can go and select, okay, this much CPU, this much memory, and so on. So you have somewhere around 261 different sizes. And I believe that this will definitely meet your requirement. Okay, now, so these sizes, they categorized into families. If you look at the family, right, general purpose, memory optimized, compute optimized, storage optimized, or if you are running some graphical related applications, GPU optimized. Or if you need a high compute, then you have high compute resources as well, which we'll be discussing in our Monday's class. What are the different types of sizes and whatever. But these are the different families and sizes that what you have. Now each family again has got multiple sizes where they categorize the VMs based into different families. And each family has got multiple sizes. And this applies for both Windows as well as Linux. So Microsoft, again, most of the guys will have some misconception that, okay, so if it is Azure, then we can only deploy a Windows resources, which is not right. So you can deploy Windows as well as Linux resources. So there is a misconception. Few of the people will ask me sometimes. So you can deploy all the flavors of Linux, and you can deploy different editions of Windows operating system, right? So how do we deploy and other stuff, which we will be seeing in our first class, that which will be on Monday. But this is what, the sizes of VMs and other stuff. Okay. Now, let us quickly look at what is the course content. Okay. So where is that? Give me a minute. I did put that somewhere. Okay, here it is. Right. So as I said, this course is in alignment with your AZ103. Now, what is AZ103? Let me quickly show you that as well. Azure certification path. Maybe I think we'll see some image so that we can understand things easily. Right, I think this is a better one. Right. Now, Azure has changed a lot when it comes to Microsoft has changed things a lot when it comes to the certifications. They are slowly moving into, or they are already into that role-based, what do you call it, as certifications. Okay. Now, what you see here is different paths to different roles, right? Now, where we are, what we are going to discuss is this one, right? AZ103. Which is Azure administration. Now there is another course called as AZ900, which is Azure Fundamentals, which is optional. You need not have to go and clear this AZ900 certification to write AZ103. Not needed. Right, so Azure Fundamentals basically covers the fundamentals. Who does not know anything about cloud kind of stuff, they can concentrate on this one and clear that exam. If you know if you have understanding on cloud and understanding on how things work, and then we can directly get into 103. I suggest we can directly start at 103 if you have some experience and other stuff. So if you are in Azure 103, if you cleared 103, then what next? So you can get to a next certification of AZ400, where if you are a DevOps guy, you can get into Azure DevOps Engineer Expert if you are concentrating on that. Or if you are a developer also, you can get into the same path. So what we teach is, we teach this one, AZ103. So AZ103 will help you with AZ400, and it will also help you with this AZ300, what you see here in the bottom, right? AZ300 architect, right? So this also has got a lot of, what do you call it as, common, what do you call it as, topics. To understand this, you definitely need this, or you should have some understanding on Azure administration when you directly write an architect. So architect exam has got both development as well as what do you call it as, administration. But what we are going to look at is at 103. Okay, now let me go back. Right, now what is that they are asking here? Let me quickly jump into certification. Where is that? Did I miss somewhere here? Okay, here it is. Now this has got some skills that which will be measured on, right? Subscriptions and resources, storage, virtual machines, configure networking, and identity and access management, which is nothing but your Active Directory and other stuff. So we are going to cover most of the things that whatever are part of this entire, what do you call it as, assessment, that what they are talking about, right? So that's what our course will cover. Okay, now apart from this, there are certain topics which are not in the exam. For example, the migrations, right? So when it comes to the job search, or if you want to perform certain things on job, most of the things where people will be look at these migrations and the normal administration. And apart from that, these ARM templates and Azure CLI and all those things will be covered. So if you look at this, this covers all the topics that whatever are needed for exam, as well as for you to kind of become an administrator when it comes to an Azure administration. Right, I'm not going to discuss these things in detail. I think it's already shared with you. If not, I'll ask this page to be shared. Okay, now what is that is needed for you to understand this course? Little bit of understanding on TCP IP or networking concepts, and then little bit of understanding on server administration, and little understanding on PowerShell and Azure. PowerShell should be enough, right? So that's what is needed, right? So that's what is the course about, right? So I think that's all I have. What is the difference between Azure and AWS and software? Okay, so when we talk about the difference, how do I put it? So they see, I cannot say that this guy is good, this guy is bad, or this is I'm not here to promote anybody. Okay, so what we need to understand is every service provider has got some strong and strong areas, right? So when we talk about Azure more in specific, they got very good integration solutions when it comes to the hybrid model. And they got certain we get some advantages of subscription advantage. For example, you are already a partner and you are already using most of the services of Microsoft, then you get very good discount. That's what we call it as subscription advantage. And your easy integration with certain services like Active Directory, right? So we're going to go and discuss these things, but these are all unique things, right? So AD integration with Azure AD, Azure Active Directory Domain Services or Azure AD Connect, and integration with Office 365. These are all certain strong areas when it comes to the Azure. AWS, they have their own strong areas, right? So they say that they are good when it comes to the kind of security or some other area. I'm not expert on AWS, but they have their own strong areas. So when you choose a solution, you have to look at all these things, right? So that's what we can say about, right? Kubernetes on Azure, I'm not going to cover that. That is not something that which we will be discussing here. Kubernetes and Docker, no, so that is not part of this content. So we are not going to discuss that. So if you have any questions, I think you can unmute yourself and you can ask.
So do we need JSON skills to learn this?
It's a very straightforward language. So you are not going to write anything until and unless you have just some tweaks you should be doing. So let me show this. You have something called as, okay, so I just closed it. What is that? Azure template. Yeah. Azure quick start template, right? Now Microsoft has got this huge resource of templates. Okay, so let us say that you want to deploy a load balancing solution. So you have these predefined or readily available templates. These are all JSON templates, right? You can see it. Now, what skill or knowledge you need if you are deploying, if you are doing a bulk deployment, you need to understand kind of what line does what. That level of understanding will help you where you can go and tweak it. Now, the other beauty within the Azure is if you deploy a virtual machine, for example, you can extract the JSON code of that, right? Or if you deploy a multiple application which has got an interdependency or connectivity as a resource group, you can extract the JSON code for that, and you can use that JSON code to redeploy the kind of resources. So to answer your question, you need not be an expert, but identifying, understanding the things will help.
Okay, thank you.
Security solutions. So when we talk about security solutions, I'm not sure what Aqua is, but uh, in Azure you attain solutions using multiple security using multiple solutions. One might be a VPN solution, or you have DDoS solutions. You have application firewalls. And then you also have network security groups which will help you to filter the traffic based on your requirement, and then they have their own firewalls as well. So you can also use third party what you call it as firewalls or virtual appliances and integrate that with your solution. So those are certain solutions when it comes to the security. So encryption, so when we talk most about security, we talk about encryption, right? And they have encryption. And we talk most about the security for the data in transit, right? So where you may want some encryption of the data in transit. So you may have to rely on certain HTTPS secure protocols, and then you can filter the traffic, right? So those solutions are there, right? NSG, Network Security Group, is one solution which filters the traffic like your normal firewall, and they also have some firewall solutions. And if you don't want to use them and you want to use third party, I think you can use those as well. Azure supports encryption. Yes, it supports encryption for the data that whatever you store. You can use your own encryption keys, or you can use Azure inbuilt encryption solutions.
Is this course is for 6 weeks or 4 weeks?
We can say that it is around 40 hours. If we are planning for 1 hour per day, then it is 40 days, right? So.
And in the end, do we have any live project? Are we doing anything lab work here?
So all the discussion that whatever we are going to do, any topic will have a scenario or a demonstration. That's how it is, and there is no project which we will be doing, but we will be covering individual topics with a scenario, and we'll demonstrate how do we use that particular service for a specific scenario. We'll try to discuss based on the requirement, 1 or 2 scenarios per topic, but there will not be any project as such.
Yeah, but as an administrator, if I got a job as an administrator, what actually I am doing here? I didn't get that here in the training. Can you please explain?
Okay, so you as an administrator, okay, so to answer your question, there are multiple roles. Okay, so one is the normal administration part, so where you will be deploying and managing the resources, right? So for example, you have a project where you need to deploy a storage, certain or a bunch of virtual machines, or you need to create a networking component and so on. That is your day-to-day BAU management and kind of stuff. Apart from that, what you have is migrations, right? So so most of the jobs what we see these days is on migrations, as well as the administration. Migrations, how do you assess the environment, how do you group the servers, and that's, we call it as discovery process, right? So discover and assess, and then what are those things that which you tools that which you use to migrate and assess. So those are certain things that which you as an administrator will be doing, right? So migrations and administrations, which we will be covering in our course.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much.
No problem.
Okay, I have one question. Like, if we have a opportunity in Azure platform, so what are the major scopes for career, like security end, or like as you said, migration, or is there any like a DevOps roles are more in future? So when we are looking forward for career opportunity towards Azure, so which area is more demanding and futuristic?
Okay, so there are multiple roles. Okay, so the role that what we are talking is an administration, right? So similarly, you have a developer role, right? So where you manage, maintain apps like web apps or functions or kind of stuff, and then apart from that, you have the architect roles, and more in specific, cloud security or Azure security itself is another complete different topic or course or certification for that matter. So you have wide range of opportunities, and then again, mostly that what you see today is still, because most of the things are again 60 to 70% of infrastructure is yet to be moved to cloud, right? So migrations, and then your DevOps, and then your automation using ARM or Terraform, kind of stuff are the hot jobs in the market, right? So that's what I can say with my experience.
Okay, thank you. So one more question, sorry. Like when we join the course, like are we going to have any our self practice you are going to assist, or is there any like lab environment set up for this course where we can jump on and practice our day-to-day classes?
Yeah, so how lab is going to work is so it's not only Azure but any cloud for that matter. So you get some free credits. Okay, so that's what we are going to use. So all you need to do is you need to subscribe yourself to Azure, and where you get a free credit of 13,300 INR. Okay, so which is valid for 30 days. So what the way how we design it here is, so we teach and then you go and practice on your own, right? So you have your own lab, reason being you subscribe yourself with your credentials, right? So what you need to subscribe is you need a Hotmail or Gmail account and a PAN card and mobile number and a credit card. So nothing will be deducted from the credit card until and unless you convert your account into, pay as you go model or whatever, right? So free subscription is what we are going to use, and that will be valid for 30 days, and that should be enough for us to practice. And those 13,300 rupees, that whatever you get, that is sufficient for us to do the entire practice. All we need to do is, once we are done with the practice, we are going to go and remove the resources that whatever we deployed, right? So so that's how the lab will work.
So you mean the subscription which we are going to use will cover all the functionalities and features of Azure. Say if I want to work on DB related activity, so that requires some specific storage blobs, everything. So
Correct.
will that cover the subscription, or we
Yes.
need to provide or charge additional?
I think for practice purpose, we should be able to do it. But again, there are certain resources which definitely will not be available, right? When you are in a trial subscription.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
for you to go and practice whatever you get as a part of trial subscription, that should be enough. Even if it is a SQL database or any other deployment, also you should be able to do it.
Okay, thank you. I'm good.
Can we use
Hey,
Terraform for Azure? Okay, one quick question we'll take on the chat. Then I think Manoj has one question. Terraform, yes, you can use Terraform as well for Azure, as in for deployment. Job market, I think we had already discussed that. Yeah, somebody was asking some question. I think
Vijay,
it's
this is Manoj
Manoj.
here.
Yeah, please.
So when you say migration, so what are the topics that, I mean, what are the things that you're going to cover, like any real-time scenarios?
Yeah, so there are multiple phases within the migration, right? So we talk about assessment phase, right? And what are the, we are going to use only the tools which are available free for us within the Azure, right? There are Azure Migrate Assessment tool, which is a free tool which we will be using to assess the environment. So we have a lab where we are going to go and do some assessment and look at how the output will be and what are those things for you as a Azure admin or architect should be aware of when it comes to the assessment, and those standard rationalization factors that whatever you should be aware to kind of make a decision whether I should be moving to infrastructure or platform or whatsoever. That's another topic that which we will be discussing. And then what are the other third-party tools that which we have, right? So you have some other third-party tools when it comes to the assessment and migrations. We are not going to see them, but we'll discuss what are the tools we have. But when it comes to the assessment and migration, we use Azure Migrate Assess for assessment of our lab environment. We'll see what is the output and we'll try to understand how the output will be, and other tools will be similar to that. There should not be any difference as such. And then we use inbuilt Azure Migrate tool, which is an OVA or an appliance to migrate a couple of VMs from our lab environment to the Azure cloud, right? So what are the prerequisites or pre-checks, post-checks, and all those things we will be looking at when it comes to the migration.
So the migration will be only at the server level.
Right. So we are not going to cover database migration and or data migration. Data migration we can look into it, a small this thing, but yeah. So it's mostly server migration, not an app migration or database migration, because we are on to kind of the infrastructure part, right? So that's where our boundary is. Hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Yeah. So anybody has any other questions?
Hi, Vijay. Sorry to interrupt you. Hi, this is Lakshmi from Careerities. Small info from our end. The batch is starting from Monday, and the timings and other things will be shared in mail. So for more details, you please reach us, and the numbers whatever I have provided in chart, or you can mail to info@careerity.co.in. Thank you. That is 27th John, Monday, IST time. For USA people, it falls on 26th. Thank you.
Okay, so before we say we are done, anybody has got any questions? If so, please ask. Otherwise, I think I'm done. We'll meet on Monday. If anybody has got any questions, please feel free to ask any questions.
So the classes will be from Monday to Friday or IST?
Right. Yeah, Monday to Friday IST.
Weekly 5, and there will be no outage. I mean, no off on the days, right? So if any, like you will be notified. I mean to
No,
say,
there will be
any
no off on what? I didn't get that. Maybe I think you have
like
repeated.
any
I'm sorry.
occasions on any occasions it will be like continuous classes, no off on any
So
day.
if it is a festival kind of stuff or something, then I think people will not be available. So those are the days I think where we might not
Yeah,
have any
that's why I
classes.
just want to. That will be notified, right? Before.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Right. Okay, guys. Thanks for joining. I wish you have a great day ahead and a great weekend as well. So if you are interested, we'll meet again on Monday. And thanks once again for joining. Have a great day ahead.
Thank you.